43 of Yinzers. No, I'm just kidding. You guys know what you're listening to. This is Around the 412 on the TK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Sorry, we're actually switching places with Yinzers this week. They will be coming out on Wednesday. We're coming out today on Tuesday, 2 days postpartum of the Penguins season finale of getting lost by the Rangers. We're the mothers. The Penguin season is our baby. We're in postpartum depression right now. But yeah, so go check out Yinzers. But we're switching places. And if you didn't notice or you didn't see our tweet, we will be coming out every Wednesday now instead of Monday. This is our first show that hasn't come out on a Monday in, a long time, like 8 or 9 months. And so, yeah, but this week we'll be switching spots with the Yinzers. We come out on Tuesday. What's going on? Sorry, that was a complete mess, Minnie. I caught you off guard, I feel like.
I was like, you said before I pressed record that you wanted to make a joke at the beginning, and I was like, I have no idea honestly, where my mind went to was the fact that my sister got married this past weekend, and I thought you were going to say something about me not being married and her being married, but that was not at all expected. But yes, this is not Yinzers. If you're watching on YouTube, that is very apparent. When you're looking at us, I know that you guys are probably a little bit disappointed, but they'll be here tomorrow for you guys.
This week will be episode 43 of the Yinzers. I had to actually.
Yeah, I was like, is that accurate? But
yeah, I had to check and make sure. Last week was the episode 42 for them. We've got a few more episodes than that, but yeah.
Yeah, that show's great. It's a hit, which is one more hit than the Pittsburgh Pirates had on Sunday afternoon, despite getting a win against the Cincinnati Reds. So let's start there. For the 6th time in MLB history, a team without a hit wins a game, the first time since 2008 that has happened. So obviously it's possible, and people are like, how the heck does that happen? Well, walks and a fielder's choice that Brian Hayes beats out a double play on is how this happened on Sunday afternoon for the Pirates. But obviously very good pitching performances on both sides. Jose Quintana, who's been a bright spot for the Pirates, very unexpected, at least from my point of view. I know we had this conversation about him on here beforehand, but we thought it was like, just like a name recognition signing, like give the Pirates something that maybe the fans would be like, oh, that's a guy whose name I recognize, and kind of latch onto that. But he's actually performed very well above expectations, I think. And then obviously on the other side, Hunter Green, who is the Reds, one of their top prospects. He was throwing 100 miles per hour when he had 110 pitches. So he was still throwing gas, and he's doing more of what he's expected to do. He hasn't had the best start to his MLB career, but I think that what we saw on Sunday was a glimpse as to what he could be. But yeah, the historical day in Pittsburgh Pirates baseball.
Man, if he was not on the Reds, he might have actually had a real no-hitter. And so it's just a shame for him for that to be the way that it ends up happening. But yeah, of course it's the Pirates for that to happen to. I mean, we've seen so many weird plays and weird ways that the Pirates have won games so far or lost games, and I think that this just basically like sums up who the Pirates are. Like they'll get blown out like they are currently as we're recording to the Chicago Cubs, and they'll win without a hit. I mean, that's basically sums up how the Pirates are. But yeah, you mentioned Jose Quintana. I honestly think that he's probably been the Pirates' most consistent starter to start the year. I mean, we've out of like Bryce Wilson, Zach Thompson, Mitch Keller, Brew Baker, we've gotten a lack of consistency amongst all of them. But Quintana, surprisingly, has been a steady horse, like going every single time he starts, and it's been a pleasant surprise. Like you said, like preseason, we thought this guy was just going to be coming in to be the 5th starter. We didn't think he was going to be good, pretty washed up, and like you said, name recognition. That's one of the reasons I thought maybe he would be the starting day or opening day like starter for the Pirates, or the home opener starter for the Pirates, just because like people recognize that name and that's what matters. But didn't end up happening that way. But he turned out to be pitching pretty well for the Pirates so far. And it's another weird week for the Pirates. I mean, we ended last week by getting swept by losing 2 out of 3, or we got swept by the Reds. I can't remember. I think we got swept by the Reds, and then we lost 2 out of 3, and then we win 2 out of 3 and win a series against the Dodgers earlier in the week last week because everybody predicted that, and then we split with the Reds again 2-2. I mean, I don't know if that's like above our expectations, below our expectations, or it kind of seems like to me that's like right where they are. They're going to beat some teams they shouldn't. They're going to lose to some teams that, I mean, you could say they shouldn't, but I mean, it's the Pirates. So
talent-wise, they're right there with the Reds, though. It's just kind of it's ridiculous. The Reds only won 3 of their first 25 games. Like, that's ridiculous. That's not a testament to where they're going to be at the end of the year.
That's like a historically bad opening to the season.
Yeah, them and the Pirates are going to be, in my opinion, pretty neck and neck by the time that we get to the end of the season. But it is crazy. The Pirates, there's 8 teams right now that are on pace to lose 100 games, and the Pirates are not one of them. So we mentioned how bad they're losing right now. Assuming that they lose this game, they're down 9-0 as of recording right now. They would be 15-19 on the season, which honestly, about where maybe even a little bit better than I think expectations were coming into the season. I didn't think that they would lose 100 games in back-to-back seasons. It's very hard to lose 100 games, let alone do it twice in 2 seasons. So they're about where honestly I expected them to be. What's so odd is, I mean, outside of, Zach Thompson and Quintana have put together now a couple good pitching performances in a row. They haven't gotten the pitching that I thought that they would need to in order to be in this spot. And, Brian Reynolds has really struggled this year. I don't know that that's going to continue. I think that he's a guy that can obviously break out of that. Brian Hayes has played well, but he doesn't have a homer this year. And you just look up and down that lineup, and it's like, you wonder how this team is even 15-19. Like, they seem like they should be a lot worse.
They just got a lot of guys that have that dog in them, like those Ben Gamble types.
You can't measure it. Yeah,
you can't measure that. But I just think it's goes back to what we've said about the Pirates so far, like multiple times this year, that they've got some guys that are willing to compete every game, and they compete throughout the game, no matter whether the score is 21-0, like that Cubs game earlier in the season, or if they're winning. They're willing to fight the entire time. And maybe like luck plays into it, maybe some talent plays into it, but I just think that there's going to be a level of compete from this team no matter what. And I think that's the reason they are where they are, and they're not where the Reds are. I mean, I honestly don't know what's the differences between the Reds and the Pirates, at least talent wise. Like, the Reds have a couple good guys. I mean, the Pirates have a couple good guys. They each have multiple bad players, but for some reason, the Pirates find themselves at 15-19, and the Reds are 3-25. It doesn't really make sense. They're probably similar teams, like you said. They're probably going to end up very close together when it's all said and done. It might be fighting for 4th or 5th in the standings. Maybe the Pirates find themselves a 3rd. Who knows?
Well, but the Reds had a little bit of a they've played better, obviously, as of late, but they're still easily in the doghouse at 9-26. Which a .257 win percentage, which is insane. But yeah, so they've gone on a 7-3 or 7-2 stretch as of late, something like that. So they're playing better baseball. Just a real quick roster note, though, before we move on to talk about the Penguins, they did bring in a new catcher. Andrew Knapp was DFA'd, and they claim is it Tyler? Yeah, Tyler Heineman off of waivers from the Toronto Blue Jays. Straight up, have no clue who this guy is. If he's even like a smidge better than Andrew Knapp, this was obviously a good move. But this just goes back to, we talked about the lack of catching that this team has with Roberto Perez being out for a significant portion of time. Who knows if we're going to see him again in a Pirates uniform. You needed something else to go with Michael Perez, and that's just a horrible, horrible catching tandem. But I guess it's better than Perez and Andrew Knapp.
Yeah. Well, initially when I saw that they picked him up, the first thing that came to my mind is, another man's trash is another team's treasure. I mean, I don't know what we're going to get from this guy, but it can't be much worse than Andrew Knapp. Might be even the same, but at that point, who really cares? DFA 1, pick up another DFA player off another team.
See if you can catch lightning in a bottle or something. Yeah, I don't know. All right, but speaking of catching lightning in a bottle, the Penguins were unable to do that for a full series with Louis Domingue net. We did get Tristan Jarry back for a Game 7. We did get Sidney Crosby back for Game 7. We did get Rickard Rakell back for Game 7. Unfortunately, it did not matter. The Pittsburgh Penguins fall in 7 games to the New York Rangers, which, I don't want to toot my own horn, was my prediction before the series started. But we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about a lot more. We're going to talk about what the team could look like for the 2022-2023 season. We'll do all that when we come back. This is Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. And welcome back to Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Not Ginsers again tomorrow if you're here for them. All I'm Smitty. That is Tyler. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins. No longer playing hockey after Sunday night's loss to the New York Rangers. They fall in 7 games to the Rangers, despite having a 3-1 lead in that series, despite getting to that point with Louis Domingue in net for a good portion of that series, obviously. No Sidney Crosby for a game and a half in the series. Rickard Rakell didn't play from what was it, like his first couple shifts of game 1 until game 7. I mean, there were a lot of things going against them, but I think most people are just going to have that still a sour taste in their mouth after blowing a 3-1 lead, after blowing leads in 3 straight games, 2-0 lead, 2-0 lead, 2-1 and 3-2 leads in game 7. I want to start off, obviously, want to get your opinion on this, and I know that like we're going to see hot takes galore in the coming days. I just think it's another one of those cases where you can't put every single series loss under the same umbrella. I get that we're still disappointed about it, and I think that it's even a little bit more of a bitter taste knowing that this could have been it for this core. And to see them have a 3-1 lead, I know it's devastating, but you got 898 save percentage from your goalies in this series. You got absolutely nothing from your special teams, and to go 7 games against the Vezina winner, he's going to win the Vezina, and a goalie that's up for the Hart, and that really doesn't happen. If you would have told me that was going to happen at the beginning of the playoffs, well, that's what I predicted would happen, was it go 7 games. And that was assuming that it was going to be Casey DeSmith in net, not Louis Domingue, not knowing that Sidney Crosby was going to miss a game and a half, not knowing Rickard Rakell wasn't going to play all those games. Brian Dumoulin wouldn't play after game 1. I mean, this team, it's almost like you just have to laugh, like everything that this team had to go through. I understand it's still disappointing. I am disappointed as well, but I think that it's, I can do without all the hot takes and people making it seem like it was such an epic collapse of ridiculous proportions.
Yeah, I mean, you predicted it to be Rangers in 7. I predicted it to be Rangers in 6, and I mean, they ended up going 7 games, but there was a lot just fighting against the Penguins in this series, like you mentioned. I mean, who would have expected Louis Domingue to come in and be the starter for basically the majority of the series, all the series? And
after game 1, it looked like that would be a fine thing. Him coming in,
it looked like a fine thing, but then it set in that this guy is a fringe NHL, most likely AHL starter, and we started to see those third string goalie mistakes as well as the plays breaking down in front of him. So it just wasn't a great combination. I mean, you mentioned the penalty kill. Special teams was awful. The Penguins had 5 goals in this series on the power play, and 3 of them came from the second unit. And
say that number's deceiving.
And the power play or the penalty kill, what happened from the end of the season to this series? They finished 3rd in the NHL. They were 85%, and in this series, they were 67%. They were 5 of 15 on power plays for the Rangers. That's unacceptable. That's not what we've seen from the Penguins this year.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Not that I wouldn't do the trade over again. Zach Aston-Reese is a big reason why that penalty kill was as good as it was for a majority of the season. That number obviously wasn't going to drop as far as it could have because of, there was only, a couple weeks of the season left by the time of the trade deadline rolled around and Zach Aston-Reese was dealt. But he was missed, I think, a lot, especially in this series, and I think that it showed up. Brian Boyle is too old. Jeff Carter's too old. Brock McGinn stinks.
Like 20%? Like, that is a huge drop-off. And having the penalty kill not be up to par with the goalie you had in net is just a bad combination. So there was just so many things going against the Penguins. But as much as I want to say, like, I'm not going to make those excuses and blame it all on that too. Like the Penguins, you said, had multi-goal leads in all 3 of the clinching games, and they blew them. That is also unacceptable, as well as the play in other areas. I just think that the Rangers were able to close out the games when they needed to, and the Penguins were not. I think that's it. Like
I don't know what it is,
and I don't want to hear it like the officials were like, oh, against the Penguins. Like, no, the officials just suck in general for every team, not just your team. It doesn't matter. The Penguins could have played better. It doesn't matter what the penalties were called and what penalties were missed. The Penguins could have just flat out played better, but they didn't.
Yeah, they were about 6 minutes away in game 7 from winning this thing. But yeah, I think that, I mentioned Zach Aston-Reese being a big thing, but the Penguins dominated the series obviously at 5v5. But the biggest thing to me, and this goes back to the regular season, the first 2 or 3 shifts, sometimes even the first shift, right after scoring a goal, I don't know what it is about they just get hemmed into their own zone that first or those first couple shifts after, and then a lot of the time they give up a goal. I mean, how many times did we see the Rangers in the playoffs, or even like I said, going back to the regular season, the opposing team strike back within the first minute of the Penguins scoring a
That
goal?
became a pattern the last month and a half of the season. We saw that
Yeah.
multiple times throughout the
And
month
that's
of
something
April
that's so
into the
hard to
series.
identify why. Like there's really nothing that I think that you can pinpoint that to. Like, what exactly is the reason? 'Cause it's not always like the same line that's being deployed or anything like that. I don't know how to figure out what the issue is there. But again, okay, so me going back to this game 7, I mentioned on the last episode that we had the opportunity to record, the Penguins were up 2-1 in the series the last time that we had a show. Man, what I would do to go back to those days. But I mentioned how good that the Penguins were on faceoffs, and they still finished the series being well ahead in the faceoff circle. But specifically on the penalty kill, they had a lot of trouble in the faceoff circle. Specifically, Teddy Bluger, who's a guy that I singled out in a good way on the last time that we recorded. He was very bad, especially in game 7 in the faceoff circle in defensive zone draws. And that's kind of his bread and butter because he's not going to score goals. The only thing that he's really going to do in the offensive zone is some board play to kill time and keep, their team in their own zone. But I thought, as this series prolonged, he was one of the worst players on the Penguins roster. I mean, that whole fourth line wasn't very good. I mentioned Brock McGinn to me was like the worst player on the Penguins roster here down the stretch. But
And
Bluger,
ultimately,
and I don't know,
he created the turnover and the penalty that ended the
took the
series.
penalty that cost him the series. Yeah, but for me, Bluger, he didn't look like the same player, after injury, and maybe that is still a part of it. Maybe he was playing tentative. I don't know, but yeah, I think that, and we're about to talk about this. This team has a lot of questions going forward that we're going to get answers to, before we see this team step back onto the ice. I think just from an offseason perspective and how intriguing it could be, intriguing is, a loosely used word here, whether, for better or worse, it's going to be intriguing. It's almost like the same as the Steelers. We just had the opportunity to talk about that not too long ago, right? With Ben going out, with Kevin Colbert going out, like the first time in 15 years that we've been talking about either of those things. Now with the Penguins, we've seen that same trio of players be together for 16 seasons. All of a sudden, 2 of the 3 are free agents. So this is, we're gearing up for what could be the most intriguing offseason for the Penguins that we've ever seen in franchise history, honestly.
Yeah, in the notes, but before we recorded, the question is like, when this is the most intriguing offseason since when? And I think I would say 2005. And the reason for that is that was the season, the offseason that they won the draft lottery and they got Sidney Crosby. Ever since that offseason, there hasn't really been an offseason where like there was a ton of change or they were signing these big players or drafting these big players. We haven't really had that, or losing big players. I mean, in consecutive drafts, we got Fleury, Malkin, and Crosby in the first round. That like set us up. And then we got Letang, and then we got Stahl. Stahl did leave. I mean, that was a big thing, but not like this. Nothing even remotely close to this. But I would say like 2005, that was the last time we've had an offseason that was like this big for the Penguins franchise. I mean, arguably that 2005 offseason is the thing that saved the franchise for being in Pittsburgh. If they don't have Sidney Crosby, I mean, you might be cheering for the Kansas City Penguins at this point. But right now, with the unseen future of like all these free agents on the Penguins, especially 2 of the big 3, 2005 is the last time I think there's been this big of a shift for the Penguins.
Yeah, I remember after they lost to the Red Wings in the final in 2008, there was a lot of talk because like we had just gotten Hossa and was he going to resign? Then he ends up going to Detroit. I know that was a very intriguing offseason because it was like, okay, the Penguins got there, but how do they get over that one last hump to beat this seeming dynasty in the Detroit Red Wings? So I remember obviously that offseason very well and what how they had to approach that. And obviously they go back the next season, they do win the cup. And then obviously all those off seasons where there was some speculation, people trying to drum it up like they need to trade one of Crosby or Malkin, they would never work together.
Dude, since 2014, we've heard Malkin is going to be traded.
Yeah, and then obviously
like the Malkin
Letang,
speculation for us is nothing new, except this time it's a free agent and not a trade.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, so let's just kind of dive into this. Obviously, Gino's a free agent, Chris Letang's a free agent, Brian Rust is a free agent.
I wanted to play a game with you.
All right, settle down, Jigsaw.
I wanted to play a game. I wrote down 4 different categories, and I have down all of the free agents for the Penguins.
By the way, for people that are watching or listening to this, I didn't know what this was exactly beforehand. So
yeah, so I'm just throwing you into the fire. And this is just free agents that are currently on the NHL level on capfriendly.com. So there's 11 of them, and I want you to put them in 4 different categories. We have definitely, probably not, and definitely not for how likely it is of a return to the Penguins in the 2022 season.
So not what I would do.
Not what you would do, like what you think is going to happen.
Okay.
So I know we are not going to agree with a lot of the GMs or the Penguins GMs in the league. Like so not what you would do, what you think is going to happen. And I kind of put it in an order where I think it goes from least exciting to most exciting as far as answers go. So the first one up is Nathan Boyle.
Okay, what was I'm sorry, what were the tiers again? Definitely, probably,
probably not, and definitely not.
Okay.
I thought about putting a maybe in the middle, but I just stuck with the 4.
Okay. All right, so yeah, he's definitely not. They got him for free. There was no reason, I guess, for them to not make that deal. But there's so much. Even if they move one of these guys out, which we I guess could talk about, one of these left-handed defensemen out. If it's Dumoulin, Pettersson, Matheson, they got POJ in the wings. They got Mark Friedman on a great deal. No, he's not going to be back.
Yeah, I mean, it was a depth signing whenever it happened, or a depth trade whenever it happened, but it was just weird. It's like, why do we even need this depth when we have all the depth we don't use already?
Ricola?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Ricola. I mean, I agree. Definitely not. There's no way he comes back. Okay, next one up, Brian Boyle.
I'll say probably not. The only reason I'm not saying definitely not is because obviously Sullivan liked him enough. I think that he showed out pretty well. I wouldn't, like, if you're asking me if I would, thank him for his service. I think he exceeded expectations. But I think that depending on the other offseason moves and how close they are to the cap when they start to fill out the roster, they could circle back if he's presuming he's not signed by another team, and obviously now having to have an offseason surgery. I don't think that he will be. So I'm leaning, like, it's in between probably not and definitely not, but I'll say probably not just for the sake of I don't know what the center depth on the team's going to look like as we get closer to camp.
Right. So for my personal choice, I'm with you. I'd say definitely not. I think he really got exposed in the Rangers series. I don't think he has the legs. I mean, he's a 37-year-old forward. So the speed is not there for him. I think that it was definitely a cool story to see him come in on a tryout contract and perform the way that he did for this season for the Penguins. But yeah, I think with the age, the style of play, I'm just on the definitely not side. But for me, I do agree with you. I'd put him in the probably not in terms of the Penguins' viewpoint on him. So the next one up, Louis Domingue, Mr. Pork, Spicy Pork and Broccoli himself.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll say, see, he would be somebody that if you did put that maybe in here, I would probably have him there. I'll say probably not, but it could be a probably if they want to try to, like, do something with the Smith and make the Ming the backup to Jari. So I'm somewhere in the middle of those two. I'll slightly lean probably not. I don't know that they're just going to, like, throw this postseason, completely on him. But he performed how you would think that a guy with his resume would perform. And I don't know that he's even capable of being a serviceable NHL backup. But if they were to try, and now DeSmith has had, core muscle surgery in back-to-back years, it's possible that he returns as the NHL backup. But I'll say probably not because I'd rather have it be probably not.
Yeah, me too. I'd put him in probably not. I think if he came back, it would just be to mainly be the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton starter. I don't think they would ideally want him to be the backup to Tristan Jarry. I do think they'd at least want it to Smith, if not someone else. I mean, maybe they do make a move or a signing of a different goalie to try to bring in a backup. But I just don't think that Domingue has really much value. I think that like he was a good story as well, but not that great of a goalie, as much of a good story. So I'd put him in probably not. The only thing I'd want him for is Wilkes-Barre, but even then, maybe we'll take some evaluation of goalie talent down in Wilkes-Barre, like Alex Diorio. I literally know nothing about him. Ask Taylor Haas. She probably knows way more than either of us do. We know nothing about any of the Wilkes-Barre guys, really. So yeah, I would put him in probably not. So next up, we have the main man himself, Kasperi Kapanen. Is he coming back?
I'm wondering when we're going to start getting to the guys that I'm actually like intrigued by, and we could have a conversation about.
That'll be come to later.
This front office did not acquire him. Obviously, we also have new ownership taking over. I don't think that he did enough. He performed decent for a couple of games in those playoffs, but then again down the stretch, he was kind of invisible again and brought down Gino's line in that game 6 and 7. And so yeah, for me, I'm going to say probably not. I would be definitely not if he were like a straight up UFA, but I'll say probably not.
So I'm going to say definitely not. I'd put him at definitely not because I just think that the little glimpses we got in the playoffs in the first like 3 to 4 games is not going to be enough to make up for basically a wasted season. I mean, this guy had high praise. I'll bring it up again on this show. Smitty had him at 33 goals on the season and leading the Penguins. Clearly that did not happen. I just think that they're ready to move on. I mean, he is an RFA, so maybe that changes things. Maybe they look to try to see if they can get any taker to trade his rights or anything. But if it's me, I'm not even giving him a qualifying offer. I think the Penguins are going to have cap issues no matter what, and I don't really want to put any of my cap into Kasperi Kapanen. So, and I don't think the Penguins do either at this point. And so I'm putting him in definitely not. All right. Next up, I think this is where we start to get a little more intriguing. I have Danton Heinen up next.
I'm going to say probably. I think at one point, we talked about this. I felt like he was kind of in Sullivan's doghouse, but he's kind of like, other than playing center, one of those Swiss Army knives that like Sullivan always loves to have on the roster. I think that it will be a reasonable deal that he gets. I think that he'll get a modest raise on his deal. He only was making like 1.1 million or something this year, 1 million, 1.1 million. Yeah. So I think that he'll get a modest raise there, but I think that he's a guy that Sullivan does covet. And I think that he can play, in the middle six, even on the fourth line at times. I think he brings enough of a defensive presence to play down there. But honestly, I like him better as a second or third line wing. And I think that he's capable of doing that. So I'll say probably. I'm not going to go as far as definitely, but I'll say probably for Danton Heinen.
I'll say probably too. I liked what we saw down the stretch from him. I think that overall in the season he had a pretty good season, and I do agree. I think that second to third line wing is where he fits the best. I mean, he had 18 goals on the season. He added what did he have, 1 goal in the playoffs, or am I thinking wrong?
He had 2 at least.
2.
He scored in game 7, but he
3.
also had the game
3.
winner. So I remember 2 right off the bat, but I had.
Yeah, so he had 3.
Okay.
I would put him in probably. I think that he's one of those depth value guys that they're going to need to retain. I mean, maybe they give him another 1-year deal, 2-year deal, maybe. I don't know. I don't see them giving him like a longer term contract, like a 3-4.
No, but I think that there are going to be other suitors that they're going to have out there. So that's why I think he gets a modest raise. But at the same time, I really think that he liked playing in Sullivan's system. He kind of rebounded here from playing in Anaheim. So I don't think he's necessarily chomping at the bit to leave Pittsburgh either.
Yeah, for sure. All right, up next, this is a very, I feel like, controversial one for the fan base. Evan Rodriguez.
This is my first definitely. I'm going to say definitely. Yeah. And again, I think that he's another guy that I think it's a modest raise, but I think Sullivan likes him so much. Obviously, he wasn't thrilled with that penalty that he took, but that kind of turned the tides of game 6. And, Sullivan even said as much. But, this guy can do a little bit of everything. He kills penalties when you need him to. Maybe he's elevated into more of that role without Brian Boyle being around next season, if that is the case. And maybe another winger that we're going to bring up here in a little bit. But I think that he's just a guy who can play center, can play wing, can play second line through fourth line, in any of those roles. And Sullivan, I think, covets that, similarly to what I just said about Danton Heinen, other than the fact that Rodriguez can also play center. So, yeah, this is my first definitely for me. I think that if I'm a betting man, Evan Rodriguez is still in the Penguins next year.
Yeah, I don't think Evan Rodriguez is what we saw in the very beginning of the season, but I also don't think he is what we saw throughout the last 2 to 3 months of the season. I think he's somewhere in the middle of that, and I think he is a guy that can do it all, like you said. And I do think that moving forward, the Penguins are best suited to have him as their third-line center if he's going to be on this team, and that would mean bumping Carter to the wing, assuming he would still be on the team, which, I mean, we could talk about on a different show. But I do think that Evan Rodriguez at least still has some value. I do not think he is as bad as what we saw to finish the season. I mean, maybe the confidence really did bug him that much, but dude, the drop off was just astronomical. So I don't think he's that type of player. I do think that he's going to be back, and I do think part of that is because Sullivan likes him. Sullivan has players that he just like really likes and likes to keep around. And for a while, Dominic Simone was that player. And coincidentally enough, a lot of people were relating Evan Rodriguez to Dominic Simone going down the stretch of the season. So that, to me, that is a key that he's going to be back for the Penguins. And you said you think he gets a modest raise. What do you think is a significant raise for him? I mean, he's at $1 million right now. So do you think he goes up to 2.5, 3? Like, what are we talking?
I was just say 2.25. I think that you're going to have another team or two that maybe could, try to kick the tires on him. But again, he's another guy that I think just would rather stay in Pittsburgh, rather than make a couple $100,000 more. So yeah, I'm looking at like maybe a 2-year deal, not quite $5 million, maybe in like 4.5, 4.75 range.
Okay. Now we're moving on to another goalie, one we lost early in this playoff run. Casey DeSmith, do you think he is back?
Yeah, this would be, again, if we had those 5 tiers, I'd probably say maybe.
Yeah.
I'll say probably. The only thing that is hanging me up is this is now back-to-back years where him being injured has really changed the course of what they've got in goal. Because they would have loved to have turned to him last year instead of Jarry, with Jarry faltering in the playoffs. And this year, I can't guarantee that it doesn't go 7, but I think even with the Smith and net, the Penguins are able to wrap up this series against the Rangers. So I
Which
think
is funny
because
we talked whenever that happened, like whenever he got injured, that we didn't think the drop off was going to be that significant.
I tweeted that,
and
we were about the same player. Yeah, 100%. I was wrong. I'll admit it. But I will say, just because of what the alternatives look like, I can't imagine Hextall's not going to address goalie in back-to-back off seasons. I'm between probably and probably not, because of me thinking that they have to address goalie again for a second straight off season, and also because of back-to-back years with injury. I'll say probably not for DeSmith.
Well, hey, it turned out today that they might be kicking the tires on Marc-Andre Fleury. Who knows? But we could talk about that again on another show. But I'm going to say probably, just because I feel like if you would have asked me this in January, I would have said heck no, because of the play of DeSmith was so bad. But I think he really turned it around. After like late January on, he was a really good backup goalie. Like, honestly, one of the better ones in the league probably at that time. And I just don't think there's any goalie like that's down in Wilkes-Barre that's ready to come up. And backup goalie to me is like one of those awkward positions where it's like, how do you fill it in the off season? I mean, there's not really a lot of like coveted free agents that are going to be backup goalies, I feel like. And like, what do you trade for one? Like,
I think that we're going to see
position.
Yeah, I think even we saw Jarry play a lot this year, and I think, I would rather that not be the case, even though I love the guy. I think in this case, especially with goaltending in this league now, less is more. You're going to get more out of him when you limit those games. I want them to have that 1A, 1B. So I'm not looking for a guy that is like, I'm viewing as like a backup goaltender. I'm looking for a guy that's playing nearly the same amount of games as Tristan Jarry.
Yeah. And still, to me, that's tough. Like, how many of those are there?
Yeah.
That aren't.
And I wouldn't even roll, but they're going to have, I don't know how much of this is going to come true. What we're saying on here, probably not with these guys, but assuming they didn't bring any of them back, they got $30 million. And again, Hextall knows how important goaltending is, I think, being that he has that background. And I cannot see them not addressing goalie for a second straight season. And I'm not just saying free agent. I think that they could look to maybe that's where we see one of those left-handed defensemen. It's like the same conversation we had last year. Maybe that's where we see one of those left-handed defensemen offloaded, is to bring in a goaltender.
Right. All right, moving along. I'm kind of gonna lump these two together because I think one depends on the other, and it's gonna be Brian Rust and Ricard Raquel.
Brian Rust. I mean, I'm teeter-tottering here. I'm going to say definitely not. I truthfully think This is his shot to really get paid. He's been playing on a discount his entire tenure here in Pittsburgh. This is his shot to finally get the bag. I mean, it's been linked to Detroit, basically going back to last offseason if the Penguins were to try to unload him as a, and get something for him as opposed to just losing him in free agency. I think that this is his shot to finally get paid, and I think he does so. I'm not guaranteeing he's going to be Detroit, but, I think that he could get nearly like a Zach Hyman deal, and there's no way the Penguins are giving him that. If he comes back on a discount again, I mean, God bless him, but I don't see it happening, and I can't fault him for not doing so. And then to turn off of that, Rickard Rakell for me is a probably. I think that with what they got for him, I know that the Penguins as a whole, and I understand they have a new management, new ownership and stuff. You're not trading away guys assuming that they're a rental. I think that they're going to do everything they can to retain him. I think that the results showed enough for that to be the case. I think anytime a guy is a rental, it's either because they didn't perform once you traded for them and you want to cut bait, or I mean, your cap situation is so terrible, and the Penguins have the money right now. I mean, at least right now, before they re-sign the guys that we're talking about, Rickard Rakell, if they want him to be the priority, he absolutely can be. So I'm going to say probably.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely with you on Rust. I just think that he is going to make too much money elsewhere. Like you said, the Zach Hyman deal, I believe Zach Hyman's deal is like a 7-year deal worth $8 million a year. And I think if Russ wanted to, he could get a team to pay that, or at least something close to that. And the Penguins definitely can't. And especially the reason I paired them together is it's because it's like if you paid the one in Rust, you can't pay Rakell. And if you pay Rakell, you can't pay Rust. You kind of have to pick your own poison there. And not that it's either one's poison. They're both very good players, but you're going to lose the other one if you sign the other. But I'm with you. I think Russ has had his time in Pittsburgh. If he comes back, that's great. But if not, then I mean, good luck. I really hope he does good, but I would put him indefinitely not. I just think it's time. He's going to make too much money, and it's time for him to cash in. I mean, he's won 2 cups with the team. As much as he'd probably like to try to win another, this is going to be his biggest payday that he can get in this league. So go and take it, my friend. And as far as Rakell, you put him in probably. I'm going to put him in definitely, and I think that this front office is not going to want to lose this guy after what they gave up for him. And I know like they didn't give up like a first-round pick, which is honestly great, but you're not going to trade for a rental to try to just not sign him. I think the Penguins are going to definitely bring him back. I think they saw what he brings to this team, and he's a lot different of player than what I thought coming into Pittsburgh. I didn't know that Rickard Rakell could be good in his own end. I didn't know that Rickard Rakell could lay
he's
the
even
body
got a little
like
bit of sandpaper that Brian Burke is looking for.
Yeah, and he's a great playmaker. He's got a good shot. I think that this is a guy that is really perfect for the Penguins, and we saw that he is a perfect winger to go along with Jake and Sid. I think if Rust moves on, then there's no reason that he should not be on that top line.
Solly can't do it if he's not going to be able to do it. Yeah.
I know, but that's the thing with Rust gone. I don't think Sully's going to have the winger that he can put up there. I think the reason that Rakell was not put up there anymore after a couple of weeks was just because Rust came back, and I think that they wanted him to be with Sid, and it's kind of like a Sullivan tendency. But I think that Rakell plays amazing with Sid. We saw the chemistry already. And I think they're going to add on to that. And I just don't think the Penguins are going to want to lose him after this short stint with the team and what we saw from him. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the last 2, but we'll go one by one. And we will start with Evgeny Malkin.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure which way we're going to start with. I hear all the outside noise, and I'm believing none of it. I'm definitely on Gino. He's even said himself, and very eloquently, only as Gino could, I'm a very rich man. I don't think that he's looking to break the bank on this deal. I don't think he's going to feel like slapped in the face or anything, lowballed by what the Penguins are willing to give him. I know that there's like even reports coming out the same day as we're recording this that dispute that. Until he's not, it's hard for me to believe that he would play anywhere else. I mean, as is the next guy we're going to talk about, but I might have a different answer there. I don't see it. I mean, I know that it like shouldn't even leak into like the Sid conversation, but for me it does because these guys have spent so much time together and been, Batman. I don't even want to like discredit Gino by calling him Robin, but like for the sake of this, like been Batman and Robin for so long together. he's gonna remain in Pittsburgh and they're gonna finish their careers here.
Batman and Nightwing. He's like an upgraded Robin.
There you go. There you go.
I think that I'm with you. I don't see a way that he doesn't come back. I know that there was numbers thrown around today that offered like a 3-year, $5 million AAV deal. I don't really know if that is true, how much stock to put in that, but I just don't see a way that the Penguins are going to let him go. And honestly, thinking about it, where is he going to go where he could get more than what the Penguins would probably offer him? And I'm looking at probably he would probably get somewhere in the $6.5 to $7.5 million range is where I would like him to be. I don't know if that's where the Penguins are going to be, but where is he going to go, especially after having knee surgery? I mean, he still looks good, but he's definitely not
still
the same Gino.
Player.
He's still a point per game player, but he's not going to be that Russian Bear superstar like we once saw. I mean, age catches up to these guys. He's not going to be the Art Ross winner anymore. But that doesn't mean he's not a great player in his own right still. I think that he needs to come back. I think he's going to come back, and maybe he does like decline a little bit as the years go on. But as of right now, I see no reason the Penguins should not offer him a deal. And maybe you do offer him a $3 million contract, or a 3-year contract, not $1 million. That would be a slap in the face. But a 3-year contract, that way him and Sid are up at the same time and they can decide what they want to do with them together, whether they want to retire at the same time, whether they want to keep playing, whether he goes to the KHL and Sid continues to play with the Penguins, whatever. If you give him a 3-year contract, at least they have that decision to be made whenever that time comes in 2025. So I'm with you. I think he is in the definitely category for the Penguins. And the last one, which I thought Evan Rodriguez might be the most controversial one, but honestly, Chris Letang might be the most controversial one. But I saved him for last because, in my opinion, he should be the number one priority, even over a guy like Evgeny Malkin, to the Penguins in this coming off season. But what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me, like, I understand Crosby's the best player, he's the most valuable player, but Chris Letang's kind of the straw that stirs this drink. And I think that a big portion of that is because we haven't seen, like, John Marino take that step that we were hoping that he would offensively since his rookie year. We haven't seen POJ play really at all in the NHL. Like, there's not a Chris Letang waiting in the wings like there was a Chris Letang waiting in the wings when Sergei Gonchar, the former quarterback of the power play, moved on. And Chris Letang kind of took over that role, ended up playing 30 minutes a night for, a decade plus. There's just not that guy. So I think that Chris Letang is definitely the most important free agent they have, which is crazy to say when you're talking about Evgeny Malkin also being a free agent. But man, for me, because he is a guy, unlike Gino, I think that can demand a raise. It's a little bit tougher. Now, the question is, like, is he going to do that? Like, again, this is getting back to like how much stock you want to put in these reports that we're hearing, how much stock you want to put in the fact that his first agent is now the GM in Montreal and everybody. So that's a very easy connection for everybody to make. I saw somebody on Twitter. I wish I knew who it was. I know who, like, the handful of people who are having the conversation. So it was either like, Jeff, who's been on the show, Jeff with an O on Twitter, right, or Jazz or Hunter. I can't remember which one of them said this specifically, but it was basically like, right now, just flip Chris Letang and Evgeny Malkin's cap hits and you're golden. Okay. Yeah. And that's kind of like the sweet spot to get those deals done. And for me, I'm completely fine with that. So Chris Letang at $9.5 million. For the holdup apparently is the years, not even the money. That was the original report before, you brought up the 3-year, $5 million matching deals they were reportedly offered, which again, I'm not believing. I'll believe it when I actually see that. For the sake that I know that he can still get paid more than what he's making right now. And again, this isn't the front office, the same front office. This isn't the same ownership. I'll put him not if there was a maybe. If there's a fifth maybe, I would probably do that.
I really screwed you on some of these.
Yeah, you really did. But I'm not willing to say probably not. So for me, it's got to be a probably.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't put him in that definitely because there is that unknown. Like, would he actually leave for the money? I mean, he's like you said, he's the one guy that can demand a raise. And there's all this speculation about Montreal. I mean, they've got the money to be able to give it to him. His first agent is the GM. There's a lot of smoke. I mean, he's from French Canada. That was his childhood team. So there's so many connections there. But at this point in his career, like, honestly, can the Penguins at least come close to the money that they're going to offer him elsewhere? That's what I want to wonder, because I mean, you've won, and I understand that you probably at this point are not just looking for a Stanley Cup, but you're looking for a last payday. But how much more of a payday do you really need? And I know this is I'm not the guy making the contract or getting the contract, so I can't really say anything. But at this point, I feel like people are just going to like be quick to throw away what the city of Pittsburgh means to Letang, what his teammates mean to Letang, the Penguins organization. I mean, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. I feel like there's a lot more that goes into it than just who's going to throw the biggest check at him. And to me, I think that will play into his decision. And I think that if the Penguins can come close, maybe they don't make it to 9.5, but maybe they do like 8.5 or 9. I think that could get it done. And I think that the guys that we've been talking about, you can make this work and still pay Chris Letang the most amount of money among the Penguin free agents. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you. I'm in the probably. I can't put him in the definitely, but I'm not going to put him in the definitely not. Like, they're going to at least try to bring him back, I feel like. And this isn't the same regime, but I mean, this is Chris Letang we're talking about. And as far as term goes, I would personally want to get him on like a 3-year deal, just like I would want Gino on, and then to have him with Crosby as well. But if you want to throw in an extra year, like if he wants an extra year, 4-year deal, maybe that 4th year turns out to be really bad play-wise versus the money. But at that point, who cares? I mean, they're at the tail ends of their career. What are we getting from these guys? How good are the Penguins at this point? We don't know. That's all like in the future. So if he wants an extra year, who cares? Just give it to him. I think that people make it seem so easy to replace Chris Letang, and not just because of like the minutes he plays. I mean, he doesn't play like the 30 minutes like he used to, or at least got close, but still like 25 minutes a night. That's not easy to replicate. The offense is not easy to replicate. And as much as people would want him to score more goals, like, I mean, he had a career year offensively this year. He was amazing. It was one of his better years. And so I just think that there's no one in the farm system to be able to replace that. The only guy in the free agent market that maybe could come close is John Klingberg, and he's going to get a certain amount of money from another team as well. And personally, I'd rather just pay the guy that we already have a certain amount of money. So, and plus Klingberg, you're going to be looking for even more term on top of a deal instead of Letang, maybe 3 to 4 years. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm in the probably category, and worse defensively. Yeah, I'm in the probably category. I mean, and again, like Letang has his faults. We both know that, but what he brings to the team is too much to just overlook for those faults for. But all right, so let me give this a rundown a little bit. So in my definitely, I have Evan Rodriguez, Raquel, Gino, Danton Heinen. Or Danton Heinen isn't probably. So those are the definitely. Evan Rodriguez, Raquel, Gino. Probably Danton Heinen, Casey DeSmith, Letang. Probably not Boyle, Domingue, and definitely not. I have Beaulieu, Kasperi Kapanen, and Rust. You have in your definitely, we have the same Evan Rodriguez and Gino, but you don't have Rickard Rakell. You have him down in probably. Along with Letang and Danton Heinen. And then in probably not, you have Boyle, Domingue, Kapanen, and Casey DeSmith. And then finishing out, definitely not, we have the same Beaulieu and Rust. So we agree on some, a little bit different on others, but overall,
we have to keep tabs of this to see how it actually goes.
Yeah, I saved it in a note on my computer. So as this free agency and off season goes along, we can revisit this, and there's a lot of offseason to come, so there's going to be a lot of conversations to be had about the future of this team and even different areas on the lineup. Maybe we talk about guys like Brock McGinn and Jeff Carter, what their futures are going to be on the team. Some of those left side defensemen, there's a lot to move on to, but hey, welcome to the offseason, folks.
Speaking of moving on, real quick, we are going to take another quick break. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about the most talented wide receiver in Steelers history wants to, I don't know if he wants to build a new bridge in Pittsburgh or rebuild one that he burned down already, but Antonio Brown is trying to make amends here with the Steelers to retire as a Pittsburgh Steeler. We're going to talk about that when we come back. This is Round the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. All right, and welcome back to Around the 412 on the DT Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Again, not Yinsers. You got to wait another day for that. I'm Smitty. That is Tyler. Let's finish up the show talking about Antonio Brown. Did we ever think that we'd be talking about him on Around the 412 again? He tweeted out that he wanted to retire a Steeler and then had to clarify to say he meant, not play for them again, but basically sign a one-day contract. He didn't say sign a one-day contract, but retire a Pittsburgh Steeler, not play for them, just sign a one-day contract so that would be who he retired as. That's who he went down as playing for. I really don't even know what to say about this. I'm wearing this Never Say Never, but Never shirt that inspired by Mike Tomlin. I mean, it's tough because for me, I still have that sour taste in my mouth about the way everything ended. But at the same time, like all the memories, all the great things that he did on the football field, and who am I to say that he shouldn't be able to? I mean, if the organization, the people that he did, burn those bridges with, can forgive him and allow him to sign a one-day contract to retire as a Pittsburgh Steeler, why should I, as a fan, feel some type of way about it? That's kind of the way that I am now thinking about it. Although when I first saw it, man, I was like, nope, can't have this. He does not deserve to be able to do this.
Right.
But I've kind of taken a step back, stopped being over emotional about the situation, realized it's just a game. It's just a sport. And I would be okay either way. If the Steelers can forgive him and allow him to do that, so be it. He is statistically, in my opinion, he had the greatest stretch of any receiver in NFL history, in my opinion. But just from an actual talent perspective, I understand that, maybe the off the field stuff will leave a sour taste in people's mouths where they're like, no, Hines Ward, John Stallworth, Lynn Swann, they're all better receivers in Steelers history. Just from what Antonio Brown was actually capable of doing on a football field, he's the greatest Steelers receiver of all time.
If anyone says Hines Ward is better than Antonio Brown, they need to get something checked.
I mean, I've already seen it so many times.
I know. But and I think that just goes with the bitterness of Antonio Brown still. I understand that completely, and I think this whole situation would be completely different if he would have parted ways with the team in a natural setting and he goes to play somewhere else. Then it is what it is. It's water under the bridge. But the way that he went out, the way he handled it, and not even just here, like what he did in Oakland as well. I mean, that also adds on to it. There was just a lot going on.
He walked off the field for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it's continued to happen. And like you said, immediately I'm like, dude, there's no way that this is going to happen. There's no way they should let this happen. But when you think about it, this dude meant a lot to this organization for a long time. To me, he is the best receiver, like you, in the Steelers history, and he's one of the best receivers of all time. Like you said, that 5 year stretch, 5 to 6 year stretch, he was the best receiver in the NFL.
Put it up against anybody.
And people want to compare him to Julio. Personally, I don't think it was close. I think Antonio Brown was just a step better than Julio at that time. And obviously Julio's had the longevity better, but it is what it is. But to me, as far as this decision goes, I think the only people that it really matters is Art Rooney II, Mike Tomlin, and I will throw, even though he's retired, Kevin Colbert in there. If they're okay with it, then I would say by all means go for it, because I think those are the three people that were impacted by it the most. And as long as they say the okay, then I'm fine.
What about Ben? Do you think that at all they would? I don't think that they're going to, oh, hey, Ben, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? But do you think that he would be taken into consideration at all in something like this? And we don't even know that the Steelers would. Again, this is do we feel like they should? I don't have an opinion on should they. I guess that's what I'm getting at. Would the Steelers even consider this? I have no clue, because, again, those bridges we have a ton of them in Pittsburgh. He burned pretty much every one of them. I don't know how the Steelers feel about this situation.
Maybe you include Ben. I mean, for how big of a guy this for the organization it was. I mean, he's the biggest Steeler in history. I mean, to me at least. I mean, I know there's a lot of them, but to me, I'd put no one ahead of Ben in terms of importance to this franchise. And
really, I feel like we might get some comments about that.
I mean,
because for me, I think it's Joe Green first and foremost, and then it's a conversation.
I think Joe Green might be the most iconic, but in terms of importance, I mean, I think Ben's the best quarterback. He played the most important position. He's the best quarterback in Steelers history, and I think that he's a top 12 to 15 quarterback of all time, and I don't think you could say that for many other guys in Steelers history, like at their own position. Although Antonio Brown is one of those guys that you could make that case for. So, so I don't know. I maybe they may consider him, but I would still stick with at least those three, like the head coach, the GM, and the owner.
Yeah. And again, I mean, if you're a fan, obviously you can have an opinion on it. We all have opinions on it. But for me, I think just taking a step back, how much does my opinion actually matter here? It's one of those things. It's like, if the organization doesn't feel some type of way about it, if they're okay with it, if they allow him to do so, why should I feel like that's the wrong thing for them to do? He didn't do anything to me.
Yeah, true.
Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Obviously, like, this is going back to, all the Penguins talk as well. We would love to see your guys' list if you can remember those 4 tiers again. They were, what were they again? What were the 4 tiers that we were using?
Definitely, probably not, and definitely not. Let us know what Penguins free agents you think are going to come back in those categories.
Yeah, put them in the comments, tweet them at us. We don't care. Also with questions, we haven't been getting a ton of questions recently, but we're always down to answer them. So if you guys have any other questions, you can leave them in the comments. You can tweet them at us, DM us, whatever. But other than that,
let's be honest, we only have Pirates baseball.
We're moving into
until September, so we'd appreciate some questions.
Yeah, a lot of downtime on Around the 412 coming up in the coming weeks, but that will do it for this episode. This was not an episode where we needed a ton of questions. Jam-packed to the brim here on Around the 412 for this specific episode. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. Subscribe on wherever you listen to other podcasts, by the way. Hit up our link tree. You can find all of them there. I don't have anything else. Do you?
Nope.
Watch Yinzers tomorrow. We've been kind of promoting them throughout the entire thing anyway. But watch all the shows on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network, watch or listen, whatever your method is, however you enjoy your podcast content. But other than that, for Smitty, for Tyler, we will talk to you guys next week, next Wednesday, not Tuesday, next week. Other than that, we'll talk to you guys then. Bye-bye.